to my channel. Finally, it has been a while, but my laptop broke, so we're back, we fixed it, everything is Gucci. Today, I'm going to be finally going through my June wrap up. That may seem like it's old news, like you don't want to fucking know about it anymore, and you know what? I don't blame you, but I actually do have to wrap the month up because I actually didn't since my laptop broke, and I'm gonna do that today. So in the month of June, I participated in a readathon called the Sims-A-Thon, which is ran by Cara over at Bianca Reads. I will leave a link to the vlogs that I did and my TBR video that I did originally. But these are all of the books that I read over the month of the readathon. So really, it's a Sims-A-Thon wrap up as well as a June wrap up because I did the Sims-A-Thon all over June. In the Sims-A-Thon, I managed to read 12 books and calculate over 50 points. I will be calculating on screen as we go along how many points exactly that I have done. I haven't calculated them as of yet, but we will find out by the end of this video how many points I do have officially for the Sims-A-Thon. The first book that I read in the month of June along with the Sims-A-Thon is The Bells by Danielle Clayton, which is the first book in the Bells series. So I used this as my first book because my first challenge was to read a book from the first of a series to create a sim. So this is basically about a new New Orleans, if that makes sense, where beauty is everything, and in the society there are people called the Bells who hold the beauty and hold the power to make anyone beautiful and manipulate appearance. Anyone who is perceived as not beautiful is judged as a grease and kind of like are abandoned by society, and they don't want to be known anymore. Within this society, this book follows Camellia, our main character, who is already a belle, and she wants to become something called the favourite, which every year, you know, the favourite helps out with their royal family and their beauty and stuff like that. But things aren't what they seem in this New Orleans, as Camellia finds out how corrupt the society is and what the meaning of beauty really actually is. So in the readathon, this gave me 5 points, and it was kind of just an average read for me. I gave it about a 3 to 3.5 stars. There were a load of things that I really enjoyed about it. I enjoyed the comments it made about society and beauty standards and how women kind of have these double standards for each other, and how this kind of takes that to an extreme and makes the world appear utopian but it's actually dystopian. I really like that trope in books. It just kind of, you know, tickles my pickle. But some of the things I didn't particularly like about The Bells and kind of really struck a nerve with me that I didn't really like was the fact that there was lots of characters, and I know this is very typical of a fantasy novel, but I just wasn't in the mood for fantasy and there was too many characters for me to keep up with. I also do feel like the writing style was let down by a messy structure, so I feel like there was a lot of he said, she gasped, blah 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 gasped, and it just got a little bit repetitive and a little bit boring, and the writing style was overly beautiful and flowery and poetic, and I really liked it. Danielle Clayton is a great writer. I just feel like the structure let it down quite a lot. All in all, I do think it is a strong debut, and I also do think it is a strong first book in a series. It was really hard to get into, but once I did, I really enjoyed it, and I give it in between a 3 and a 3.5 stars. So I chose to build my own house instead of like choosing a household, and with this came a lot of like other challenges that I had to complete, such as actually building the foundations for my house. This was worth 3 points, and I had to read a book from a different world, and I decided to pick Saga Volume 1 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. This is a graphic novel series based on the two main characters on the cover, Elena and Marco, and basically these two are both from opposite families in a war in space, and they end up having a really big love affair once Marco is captured by the other side and Elena falls in love with him, and they have this baby, and they basically have to try and protect her with all of their hearts and all of their life from their families who are going to tear them apart. I really enjoyed this, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. There's not really much I can say about this without spoiling it or spoiling the rest of the series, but I really enjoy it, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars technically, but I'm still not really sure how to rate graphic novels, so that's that for now. The next challenge that I read to build my house in the Sims-A-Thon is Perfect the Layout, which was to read a book from like a different kind of layout, and I read Obsidian by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff with this one. Obviously, I can't really say a lot about this one because it is the third and final installment of a series called the Illuminae Files, but I absolutely loved this. It's basically another war set in space. It is told in a mixed media format. I, of course, loved the characters in this one. All of the books came together, and all the characters, you know, that were still alive came together, and it was absolutely phenomenal. It was brilliant in that respect. But I ultimately did expect more from this, and I feel like the ending was really anticlimactic, so I did give it a 3.75 in the end. I was bordering on a 4, but then the ending was just a bit sus for me, and nothing really happened in the ending, and it was just leading up to something that never actually happened. So yeah, 3.75 for this one. The next challenge in the Sims-A-Thon to build my house was to do the interior design, and this was to read a pretty book with a pretty cover, and this was worth 2 points. For this one, I decided to go with The Weight of the Water by Sarah Crossan. Now, this is a poetry collection told in verse about a girl who is an immigrant from Poland. Her and her family have come to England to look for her father, and she's kind of like the new girl, and is teased a lot for it. I give this a 3.25 because I really liked the style. I really liked the structure of the entire novel. It is told in verse and it reminded me of the poet X. Speaking of, I love the strained relationship that the main character has with her father. I can really relate, and I feel like it was a very relatable struggle. I also absolutely loved the portrayal and celebration of platonic relationships in this novel, because she has a lot of strong relationships and friendships in particular, and I really liked that and respected that. The only real thing that I can say badly about this and that really brought the rating down was the fact that the ending was so abrupt, and I feel like this really lacks closure in that respect, because I just feel like it just ended at a really weird point and I couldn't really move past it, and it ended like really in a weird space. And I feel like if it just carried on a few more pages or a few more paragraphs, it would have ended quite nicely, but for that reason I gave it a 3.25. The next challenge for building a house, and I think the last one, is landscaping, and that is to read a book with some nature on the cover. I decided to read Life is Strange Just because it has loads of nature on the cover. It has the two humans, Chloe and Max, and it also has water, some like rocks and some birds and some skies, so nature galore. This graphic novel is by Emma Vasili, Claudia Leonardi and Andrea Izzo. So this follows Max and Chloe after the events of the game Life is Strange. Now, if you don't know what Life is Strange is, it's basically a choice-based game where you make decisions and you have to figure out the mystery of Chloe's best friend Rachel, where she's going missing, and why everyone in the town's acting really weird. Alongside this, you have Max, which is this one, who has like magical powers where she can change time and manipulate time and go backwards. And it's a lot about the butterfly effect and what it means to make decisions in the moment and how it has a knock-on effect. This takes part in between games. So there's a Life is Strange 1, which follows Max and Chloe, and there's a Life is Strange 2 now, which the episodes come out every so months or whatever. You know, there's drama about that, but we'll not get into that. So the episodes come out every few months with the second one, and it follows two brothers named Sean and Daniel who are on the run from a court case of their dad being killed by a cop or police officer. This happens in between those two games. So if you're watching this and think, oh, Life is Strange, I love that game, I'm like playing it right now, I want to play it or whatever, don't read this before you finish Life is Strange. Unless you're okay with being spoiled, finish the game before you read the comic. There you go. Going back to this and not just talking about the game, I gave this graphic novel in particular a 3.85 stars. It gained me 2 points in the readathon and gave me all of the nostalgic feels. Like honestly, being back with Chloe and Max was like being thrown back to 2013, 14, whenever I played it. It was so amazing. But I do feel like this was way too quick, it was way too rushed, and I feel like it was like events but no cause and effect. Like something would happen and there would be no cause and effect, and that's a really big part of the Life is Strange story, whether you're playing game 1, game 2, or just reading this for the fun. It's always about cause and effect relationships and the butterfly effect and what effect that has on your future decisions. I feel like this was just like a series of events but nothing really like, there was no cause and effect relationship. I'm not sure if that's because it was a graphic novel, and again, I'm not really like a professional at graphic novels. I do feel like Max's like plot twist kind of thing and the overall story was really nicely done, and it was a very nice continuation on from the ending of the first game of Life is Strange, but I do feel like it lacked cause and effect in some areas, and that is so important to the Life is Strange story, so it did knock a few stars off, but it still was really good, and I still felt like really nostalgic. Now on to the live mode challenges. So basically the first half of the readathon was you just starting, building your house, doing your Sims, or choosing a family, or just getting a house, you know, everything that you would start a normal Sims game off with. Now we get to live mode, where you can kind of pick your readathon and choose whatever challenges that are going to gain you the most points or the most fulfillment out of the readathon. So I decided to start off like I would in a regular Sims game, like you would in any kind of like life decision, and that was to get a job. Now I really liked the way that Cara over at Bianca Reeves did this, because they were really creative in the way that they had careers and points allocated to the different careers, and it was really well done. I decided to pick the entertainer job, which is to read a book that surrounds music or movies, which gave me 3 points. I decided to double up on the challenge. I'm still not really sure if you're allowed to do that, but I did anyway, with the Fall in Love challenge, which was to read a book that had some kind of romantic element in. This one I decided to go ahead and reread It Only Happens in the Movies by Holly Bourne, which ultimately gained me 6 points because I doubled up on 2 3-point challenges. I love this book so much. It is one of my favourite books of all time. Holly Bourne has a special place in my heart. Of course, it's gained 5 out of 5 stars from me. Like, what else would it get? I just love the satire in this and how it makes comments about the way relationships and love and women are represented on screen in cinema. I just love Audrey and how critical she is and how mad that she gets at the world, and I think she's an amazing protagonist who knows what she wants and knows what she deserves. The only bad comment I have to make about this book and about this reread is the word Harry. And that's all I'm gonna say. So Cara did say that we could fulfill challenges twice to get like the maximum amount of points that we could possibly get. And so I decided to have 2 children. The challenge to have a child in the Sims-A-Thon was worth 5 points. So between these 2 books, I gained 10 points. The challenge was to read a book centered around a child or with a child main character. And so I decided to read the 2nd volume of Saga. Again, this is about a space war, about Hazel and her parents, Marco and Alina. The other child orientated and centered around book that I read was The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. I gave this a 3.65 and again it gained me 5 points, so again I have 10 points in total. This was so meaningful and so representative of the autism spectrum. Now this is probably the first book I've ever read with someone with an autistic main character apart from the Nowhere Girls. The main character, 15-year-old Christopher, is a child in my opinion, and so satisfies my challenge. The next book that I read for the Sims-A-Thon was for the challenge of getting to the top of my career, aka the entertainer career, and that was to read a finale in a series, and I decided to pick up Mockingjay by Susan Collins. And obviously this is the finale to the Hunger Games trilogy. This gained me 5 points and I gave it overall a 3.75 I think. In this book I finally connected with the characters that I didn't actually anticipate connecting with. I liked Prim a little bit more, I liked Katniss a little bit more, I liked Peter a little bit more. I just liked everyone a little bit more, and I feel like the characterization and the character development was really there in this book. I also really enjoyed how mental health was brought into this, and like we saw Katniss actually having some struggles like PTSD and depression due to the games, and kind of what happens when people leave the games and the game's finished, that the damage is still done. Again, like Obsidian, I do think the ending for this was very lackluster and very anticlimactic. I feel like it did wrap up everything and there was no loose ends, but I do genuinely feel like it just wasn't what I wanted from the story. We'll just say that and we'll move on. But yes, I gave it a 3.75. It wasn't my favourite, but it was okay and I liked it. Moving swiftly on, I decided to have an affair. Okay, bye! Just kidding. The challenge for having an affair was to read a book that features a breakup, and I decided to read Beautiful Disaster by Jamie Maguire. It is in my sister's room, but I didn't give it a very high rating. So I thought, what's the point in going to get it while I've already started filming? Although it gave me 5 points, I gave it a 2.5, 2.75, that kind of jive. Wasn't quite a 3 stars in my opinion, because oh my god, I feel like I could have liked this book and could have like vibed with it if the main story, the main romance was so unhealthy and abusive. Please tell me that no one thinks that the relationship between Travis and Abby in this book, the main characters, is healthy, because it definitely fucking isn't. What kind of struck me as something that I didn't expect to get from this book was a very stubborn main character as well. Abby could have just prevented the whole drama of this book happening, and she just didn't. If Abby would have just said her feelings to Travis and communicated, and that's like the worst trope fucking ever, is where drama happens because the characters don't communicate and use their language and their mouths. That sounds wrong. They use their mouths plenty in that sense. They don't actually communicate with one another, and I feel like that's not a basis for a healthy relationship. No. And the fact that he just punches everyone and controls her, it just is not itchy. There was also a lot of woman-on-woman hate in this book, and I don't really understand why, because Abby just called everyone sluts and slags and hated on other women in her internalized monologue. I just couldn't be fucking bothered anymore. I was so close to DNFing, but I didn't. I stuck it out and I did it. But she was insufferable, and so was the relationship, and it just certainly didn't pass the Bechdel test at all, and I'm not really sure how this has an overall 4-star rating on Goodreads. Who's reading this? Zombies? Moving swiftly on to a more positive reading experience, I decided to get remarried after my affair and fall in love all over again. So this book gained me 8 points because getting married is worth 5 points, which was to read a book with established romance, and obviously falling in love, we've seen before, is 3 points, and the book that you're reading has to have some kind of romantic element. For this one, I decided to reread Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. This is basically about a gay teen called Simon who is very much still in the closet, and he is secretly emailing back and forth romantically with a guy called Blue. Now, he doesn't know who Blue is. All he knows about him is that he goes to his school and that he may be possibly gay. When his friend Martin shows particular interest in his other friend Abby, Simon is blackmailed into setting them up. Otherwise, Martin will blackmail him and post his screenshots with Blue all over the school and share his secret with everybody. You probably already heard this synopsis like a million, billion, bajillion times because it's like loved on BookTube, and it has a very good reason for that. I gave it a 4.75 stars because the rep in this is just fantastic. It's adorable, very true to life. I think it is so true to certain experiences. I absolutely love how it's an LGBTQ plus novel, it's an LGBTQ plus focused novel, and it talks about outing, and it is a real problem that LGBTQ plus and gay teens in particular face, and I feel like this doesn't shy away from that, and I'm really, really grateful of that. The one thing that I have bad to say about this is that nobody fucking uses emails, Becky. No one uses emails. And the 12th and final book that I read over the Sims-A-Thon, aka over June, was It's Kind of a Funny Story by Ned Vizzini. I gave this a 3.65 and it fulfilled the challenge of finally meeting the Grim Reaper, which was to read a book centered around death. This gave me 3 points in the readathon and a whole lot of roller coaster emotions. This is all about Craig, who is deeply depressed and kind of checks himself into the local mental health institute without actually knowing it, but he does anyway. He kind of like makes loads of friends and sees loads of people's experiences with mental illnesses, so he sees people with schizophrenia, depression like him, eating disorders, etc, etc, etc. This was really good for its time. I think it was one of the first books about depression. It gave people at the time things to relate to and things to, like, you know, go off of and learn about themselves with. It's also telling of the experience of the author Ned Vizzini, who died by suicide in 2013. I think that's why I had such an emotional response to this, because I knew that Ned didn't make it out alive with his depression and the main character does, and it just makes me feel sad. This is kind of problematic because it was published quite a while ago. I think it was 2006. So some of the themes are quite problematic. There is a trans character in this. They are constantly referred to as their dead name and like he/him. They are also referred to as a transvestite for a lot of the book. I didn't really feel like that was necessary or a respectful depiction of what it's like to be trans and the trans struggle. It would have been really beneficial to see like mental health issues from a trans perspective and, you know, dive into that. But it was kind of like the character that was trans was the butt of the joke at the most of the time, and there was no real like development there. It's just really a disrespectful way of talking about trans person. I'd like to think if Ned was still alive today and was learning more about trans like struggles and stuff, he would more likely depict an accurate representation. Maybe not, but I'd like to hope so, and I like to think so. And that concludes my June/Sims-A-Thon wrap up. I really hope that you enjoyed me talking very briefly about the 12 books that I read over the course of the month, or the readathon. Here are my final scores. This is my final score, my final score. I think it's 51. Not sure if I'm right, but if I am, pat on the motherfucking back to me. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this wrap up, please get a massive thumbs up and subscribe. I do this every single-ish day, you know, whenever I have the fucking time on this channel. I do have a second one which I make more regular content on, so go and subscribe down there if you want more of me and my mess. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time that I upload. Bye!